In the name of God, I am Command Kashi, and I am here with the fourth part of the International Transportation Training. I have dedicated the fourth part of the transportation training to getting familiar with customs procedures. Given the breadth of the topic, I have divided it into two parts, A and B. In Part A, we will get to know the customs procedures together and introduce them. And we will fully explain the import procedures to you. And in Part B, we will thoroughly explain the export procedures and other customs procedures to you. In this slide, you can see the import and export procedures, each of which has its own subcategories. The import procedures themselves are divided into 6 categories. These include definitive import, temporary import for processing, return, external transit, and internal transit. And the export procedures themselves are divided into 2 categories, definitive export and temporary export. In this slide, you can see other customs procedures which include passenger procedure, diplomatic procedure, cabotage, diptych procedure, triptych procedure, and transfer procedure, all of which I have explained to you in detail. If you're ready, let's go ahead and examine the import procedures in detail together. Well, in this section, we want to define definitive import. What is definitive import? Definitive import is a procedure under which goods that enter the country are brought in permanently and for consumption within the customs territory. When these goods enter the country, definitive formalities are carried out for them. What does that mean? It means that import duties are paid for it, the cost of customs services and all clearance formalities are carried out, and commercial profit, taxes, and all other applicable charges are imposed on it. If we want to mention the categories of definitive imports, we can name imports in exchange for exports without currency transfer, imports with currency allocation and countertrade, border exchanges carried out by border resident companies and porters, which fall into this category, and imports made from free zones or border markets. In contrast to definitive imports, we have temporary imports. What are temporary imports? Temporary import is a customs procedure under which goods entering the country are brought into the customs territory on a temporary basis. These goods must enter within a specified period and without undergoing any changes must be taken out of the customs territory again. If any changes occur to them during this period due to depreciation, they are exempt from this rule. In fact, we can say that if an importer brings goods into the country for a specific purpose and for a limited defined period, and after the specified period returns them to the supplying country, this process is called temporary importation, which is exempt from fees and taxes. So the points to keep in mind about temporary importation are, first, the time period is limited. Second, the goods must remain unchanged, meaning no alterations should be made to them. Third, they must be returned to the supplying country. And finally, no customs fees or taxes are applied to them. Well, in this slide, we've provided examples of goods that, with special permission from Iranian customs, are temporarily imported without paying customs duties. These include several items: goods brought into the country for participation in exhibitions, filming and X-ray equipment, scientific and educational research devices, machinery imported for leveling land for the construction of docks and road building, equipment for installing and assembling factories and industrial facilities, spare parts and repair tools for machinery, passenger vehicles belonging to individuals who are not residents of Iran and bring them into the country for their personal use, cargo containers, or what we call containers in vehicles used for transporting goods and people. All of these are considered temporary imports. Goods that, according to international customs agreements, are eligible for temporary import and have been accepted by the Islamic Republic government, as well as relief supplies and humanitarian aid that may be brought into the country by other nations. All of these fall under the category of temporary imports. The next category is temporary import for processing, which we can consider a subset of temporary imports. The difference is that in temporary imports, we said that goods enter the customs territory for a limited period without undergoing any changes and then are returned to the supplying country. However, in temporary import for processing, goods are brought in for the purpose of completion, repair, or processing and are then exported. Some examples of goods that might be imported for processing into the country include the following: all goods related to construction and scientific research, raw materials that may be imported for manufacturing a device or equipment, fixing defects in a device and repairing it by the manufacturer country, assembling and putting together parts and then returning the assembled device. Auxiliary goods and catalysts used to speed up the manufacturing of devices, and any other similar items that are imported for the purpose of repair or completion and undergo a process. This is called temporary importation for processing. The next procedure is the return procedure. The return procedure is a process in which goods that have entered customs but, for any reason, could not be cleared, if they have not yet been sold as abandoned goods according to the law, can be declared to customs as returned goods and cleared for re-export out of the country. So what causes a product to be considered as returned goods? Either the goods were prohibited or unauthorized when they entered the country, or they lacked the necessary permits for clearance and therefore remained in customs, or they were imported as temporary imports, and at the end of the allowed period, a return declaration had to be made for their export. We will provide sufficient and detailed explanations about abandoned goods in their respective sections. The next procedure is the transit or foreign passage procedure. What is the transit or foreign passage procedure? It is a procedure in which goods enter the country through one border, pass through the territory of the country, and exit through another border. In fact, when these goods enter the country, the sole purpose is to pass through its territory, and they are not intended for consumption within the country. So the purpose is not definite import or export. As you can see in this explanation, it says that foreign goods enter Iran at one point for the purpose of passing through its territory and exit at another point. Foreign transit goods are exempt from paying customs duties, commercial profit, and business charges. At the entry customs, these goods are checked, and if any shortage is found in the declaration, a discrepancy report is prepared, the goods documents are actually corrected, and the goods are allowed to transit on the condition that the corrections are made. Transit goods must definitely be confirmed as received by the destination customs within the specified deadline. If the confirmation of receipt is not done on time, these goods will be considered smuggled, and the transport company must be accountable for the transit permit that was issued for those goods. Why? Because in exchange for that transit permit, a guarantee has been provided that the goods will be transported to the destination without any shortage or loss. We will examine all of these matters thoroughly, in their proper place and at the right time. What is the procedure for domestic transit or passage? In the domestic transit or passage procedure, goods that have not cleared customs are transferred from one authorized customs house to another authorized customs house or to other locations under customs supervision within the borders of a country. Pay attention to this part. What does within the borders of the country mean? It means that if, for example, goods enter one of the country's borders in a container, say they arrive at Bandar Abbas, and from Bandar Abbas they are transferred to another customs facility within Iran. In this case, we call it domestic transit. But another point in this definition is that the goods have not cleared customs. What does that mean? It means goods for which the clearance procedures have not been completed. In this section, it also states that at the originating customs, inspections are carried out to match the goods with the declaration, and if there are no discrepancies, a permit is issued and the goods are sent to their destination. If domestic transit goods do not reach the destination customs within the specified time, and the destination customs does not confirm receipt of the goods will be considered smuggled, and the company must be held accountable for the goods not arriving at the destination customs. The only thing that can justify this delay is if an incident has actually occurred to the goods along the way. In this section, we want to examine together the reasons for choosing domestic transit and its different types. One of the reasons that goods owners decide to use domestic transit for their goods is that, in fact, the customs broker, due to their work experience and background, or because they are more familiar with the specific rules and regulations of a particular customs office, decides to clear the goods at that specific customs. So the broker suggests to the owner to transit the goods from the entry customs to the destination customs and clear them there. For example, the goods enter through Bandar Abbas, but from there they are transited to Shahryar customs and cleared there. Why is that? Because the customs broker has more control there. Another reason is the congestion at the entry customs and the crowding of goods. To prevent damage to the goods, or because of the extra loading and unloading that happens at that customs, or due to the sensitivity of the goods, they decide to transfer the goods, say those that arrived in a container, to the destination customs with the same container, and there, with more care and sensitivity, unload the goods from the container. We also divide types of domestic transit into two categories. Personal domestic transit, which is what we usually see and is commonly done, and administrative domestic transit, which is a method generally carried out at the discretion of customs and by the customs authorities themselves. Well, thank you for your attention. We've reached the end of Part 4, Section A. I hope this section has been useful for you and that you've benefited from it.